Hello guys, and welcome to another video, and in this one we're going to be talking a bit about passive skill tree masteries because we're continuing the Crucible Trends series of videos. And in 3.21 we received a bunch of mastery reworks which largely replace a lot of the more generic options with more interesting ones, and seem to attempt to remove most of the always pick masteries. That's the ones that you would basically always have to pick if you were running a certain build. Those are things such as the Determination and Grace Reservation Efficiency masteries, for example. About half of the passive tree masteries were reworked, and I think it's quite likely that the other half are going to be reworked as part of patch 3.22. So let's take a look at the top 5 most popular new masteries that were added in 3.21. And we're starting off with the new Spell Suppression Mastery. Chance to suppress spell damage is lucky. This one is being used by about 15% of characters on the softcore trade Crucible ladder, and this also includes many characters on the opposite side of the passive tree with no access to this mastery, so it's fair to say that it's being used by a lot of characters in the vicinity of the right side of the tree that are also investing into spell suppression. And it's equally as popular in other leagues as well. And this is just generally a great mastery for spell suppression gearing. You can either make use of this mastery before you've reached 100% chance to suppress spell damage, which will help you have a higher effective spell suppression chance before you've acquired stronger gear. Or like a lot of builds, you can just make use of this mastery to simply make a smaller chance to suppress spell damage a lot more effective. This mastery will roll your chance to suppress spell damage twice, so for example, if you had 50% chance to suppress spell damage with this mastery, your effective chance to suppress spell damage would be 75%. And I think this mastery being popular is not surprising at all. It's a very strong 1-point modifier, especially considering all of these builds will already be investing into at least one spell suppression wheel on the passive tree. And next up, we've got the Leech mastery. 10% of Leech is instant. This one is being picked up by about 19% of all builds on softcore trade Crucible, and it's extremely powerful. This mastery is so good for sustain in general since it works on life, mana and energy shield leech, and one of the top uses for this mastery is on trickster builds, using this mastery to have incredible energy shield recovery. The great thing about this one on trickster is that when you do lose energy shield, you'll be able to recover to full that much faster. And that means that the energy leech support is going to be providing that full energy shield damage bonus more of the time, which is very strong. And this mastery is great to proactively solve issues with mana and general life recovery. We see a lot of builds using this mastery are Deadeyes. Obviously Deadeye is a really popular ascendancy in this league. It was a very heavy bow focused league. And a lot of these Deadeye builds are using Calm Spirit unique gloves. So they're very reliant on Leech as a primary form of recovery, and Instant Leech works wonders for that. And the next mastery is the Elemental mastery. Hits have a 25% chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistance values as inverted. And this one's being picked up slightly more than the last at 21% of all characters in softcore trade Crucible. And honestly, this mastery is just kind of ridiculous. The huge majority of builds picking this one up are bow builds. Lots of Ice Shot, Lightning Arrow and that sort of stuff. And these builds are largely using Sniper's Mark as their curse, with a small amount using Assassin's Mark instead. And many of those builds don't have exposure either. They don't have exposure from the gloves or a skill. As I said, a lot of them are using the Calm's Spirit gloves. And this means that bosses will typically have 50% elemental resistance against most of the damage being dealt. So the 25% of the time when this mastery procs, the hit will deal damage as though the boss had minus 50% elemental resistances, which is just a crazy increase in damage for just a single passive point spent. And obviously the value of this mastery goes down a bit if you're using a curse to lower a boss's resistance, but it's still quite effective even if the boss has 15 or 20% resistance. And next up we've got the Life mastery. 15% increased maximum life if there are no life modifiers on equipped body armor. And this mastery pretty much replaced the 10% increased maximum life mastery that we had access to last patch, but these two have very different use cases, and it enables a lot of interesting options for the body armor slot. This one is very popular at a 26% use rate by characters in softcore trade Crucible. Once again, a large majority of those builds are Deadeye builds, and many of those are using Hyri's Ire. a unique body armor, which just has insane value for those elemental bow builds. It has a huge amount of added damage. You also gain a massive amount of spell suppression and evasion, and importantly, it doesn't have a life modifier, which means it can be used with this mastery. And we also see a lot of Juggernaut builds, mainly Bone Shatter builds using this one too, making a big, glorious plate body armor with a huge focus on armor and other important modifiers like additional PDR. And that makes crafting these items easier when you can forego life and allocate the mastery instead. Another really strong 1-point mastery there. And lastly, the most popular new mastery in 3.21, the Mana Mastery for 12% increased mana reservation efficiency of skills. Well, it was always going to be this one, wasn't it? Especially after the removal of the dedicated reservation efficiency masteries. And this one is being used by a massive 40% of characters on softcore trade Crucible. It's quite interesting actually, because many of those builds wouldn't usually be investing any points into a mana wheel on the tree, and now they're investing at least 3 points to grab the notable and this mastery. And it's absolutely worth it, and since this is global mana reservation efficiency rather than skill specific, it's very strong. And it's often the case that this mastery is enough, along with perhaps an Enlighten, to allow a build to run that additional aura, which makes it a must-have for many builds. And I have to say, I think I prefer this mastery to the dedicated ones from last patch. It does make more sense that this type of mastery is on a mana wheel instead. And that's the top 5 most popular new masteries that were added to the game in 3.21. I do expect that we'll have a whole bunch of new masteries to ponder over again when 3.22 rolls around. Hopefully they can continue adding more interesting and unique masteries, and also buff some of those really weak masteries in the process. And which set of masteries do you guys want to see reworked the most in 3.22? Let me know by commenting below. And a big shout out as always to my channel members. I really appreciate you guys. And if you want to support this channel, you can click the join button below the video to find out more. Also, if you want to stay up to date with all the goings on the channel, you can join the new Discord server. The link is in the video description below. And thank you for watching. As always, stay tuned and stay safe.